This is Johners from the Wrestling with Johners podcast, and you're listening to my Brit Rest journey.
Yo, what's going on? It's your boy, Big Wavy Boy Johnson here.
This is the professional Nathan Cruz.
Yo, this is Man Like Doris.
Hi, this is Tom Thurber.
This is Benji.
This is the Asian sensation Kanji.
This is the Nightmare Fuel Hustle Malone.
This is Joe Rage, the Heavyweight Classic.
This is Mad Dog O'Doherty.
This is Tonga.
I'm the Breaker, Carl Kingsley.
This is the infamous Cameron Solis, and you're listening
to
Broken but Glorious.
Broken but Glorious.
To Broken but Glorious podcast, because like me, you are head to toe a pro.
Hello and welcome to my Brit Rest journey on bbgwrestling.com. I'm Chris Lappin. I'm delighted to be joined on the line by the Gene Oakland of Immortal Wrestling and Wrestle Carnival, the head honcho of Johners Podcast Network and all-round podcasting legend. Johners, how you doing, Johners?
You're too kind. That's a hell of an intro. But no, I'm great, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast. And I know we've known each other for a few years now. You've been on my show. Now I'm on your show, so it's an honour. So thank you for having me on today.
Yeah, it's something I think we've wanted to do it for a while, just as we've such busy people with interviews trying to find time to do it. So
exactly. When you're a podcaster, when you're an interviewer and always planning and prepping and interviewing and editing and all the social media that comes with it, and having the chance to actually talk to another podcaster that's in the same boat, another interviewer, is quite rare. So this is going to be a good chat. This is going to be a good chat.
Yeah, it was about 6 weeks ago we found it. It was like, I've got this date, you've got this date.
Yeah. Let's squeeze it in where we can, but it is a case of kind of, just slotting it in when you've got an available moment. But no, I'm happy to be on your show for definite.
So how's 2022 been treating you? You've had a great year so far, I think.
So far so good. I know we'll get to it, but I'm heavily involved with Wrestle Carnival, a new promotion that's based in Nottingham, and they had their first show at the end. I think it was the very end, 30th of January. Their Champion of Carnivals show. What was it? Carnival of Champions. That's right. Get it right, Jonas. I was there. That was a really, really good show. Some strong matches. New champions were crowned. And an incredible match between Gabriel Kidd and Yoda Sushi. Just super strong stuff, super stiff, man. And, I've become a huge fan of those two individuals off the back of that one match, and I've gone back and, tried to watch as much as I can with, Yota Tsuji and, Gabriel Kidd. And, I know he's doing a lot of stuff over here, and, something that I put out on Instagram a couple of days ago is that I've subscribed to Rev Pro on demand service just to hopefully one day watch Gabriel Kidd versus Will Ospreay. And then I thought to myself, well, what's the point of watching it? I might as well go down there. So if that match is announced, I'll be getting a ticket to Rev Pro to watch Gabriel Kidd and Will Ospreay for the championship. But if that match does happen, I think they've had a moment in the ring at the last show and a bit of a stare off. And I think that this has been a match that's been bubbling for a while now since Gabriel's been back over here in the UK. But that's a match that wow. I mean, once you've seen that match, I think you can kind of retire and see them. But that'll be a great match.
Yeah, definitely. So Wrestle Carnival quickly established themselves as like one of the top promotions in the country, as I think they've only had about 5 or 6 shows, and
some great matches and some great talent, and they've had international talent like Hyan. She defended her Stardom title over here in the UK. I think the first time it was defended on foreign soil, and Gary had it for Wrestle Carnival. You've obviously had Jonathan Gresham and Jordan Grace over here. A fantastic Pure Rules match between Chris Ridgway and Gresham. I think on their third show, which is fantastic, and they featured. What I like about Wrestle Carnival is that they're not necessarily a regional or a local based promotion, because although they perform in Nottingham, they've got talent from all over the country. They
kind of just grab the best from the north.
They really have,
like Lizzie Evo and like Joe Hendry, Chris Ridgway. They've kind of grab the best from the Midlands and shout out Jordan and
Denise. From the south,
big girls from London, south up as well.
Some from Wales as well. Like I say, the Northwest and Scotland as well. But yeah, Wrestle Carnival have definitely hit the ground running. And they were voted by quite a few awards last year as the best new promotion. They've unfortunately had to cancel their February show, which would have been in Tamworth this week. Obviously, COVID is still rife and affecting quite a few promotions and talent and individuals that work for these promotions. And Wrestle Carnival was one of those, unfortunately. But their next show in March, Mardi Gras, 26th of March, is going to be fantastic. But yeah, and I've been lucky to have been associated with Wrestle Carnival from day one, pretty much, as a sponsor of theirs and a big supporter, and also a backstage interviewer with them as well. They gave me my first opportunity, my first step into backstage interviewing. So yeah, that's kind of been quite an exciting development for me individually over the last 6 to 8 months for sure.
Yeah, so you say you're backstage interviewing for both Immortal and Wrestle Carnival, and coming up to Sacrifice as well soon. So how have you found it different from going from interviewing as a podcaster to backstage interviewing?
It was tough to start off with. The Wrestle Carnival's first, well, I say tough, it was interesting because it was a step into the unknown, and it is totally different from sitting behind a microphone, behind a desk, doing your podcasting, talking to guests, whether it be video or audio and whoever it might be, and then to actually be standing there in front of your banner with a live microphone and a camera, and you don't really know what they're going to say. Sometimes you don't really know how you're going to start or what your first question might be until you're there. And you kind of go with the flow and whatever takes you at that moment. And their first show on the 1st of August last year, I interviewed Giselle Shaw, Lizzie Evo, Chris Ridgway, so some pretty big names, and obviously Giselle, one of the best promos going at the moment in wrestling. Lizzie Evo is fantastic. Lizzie Evo, sorry, I think I called her Evo and she gave me a funny glance, but it's Evo. A fantastic all-round performer behind the mic and in the ring. And there was a few others I interviewed on the day, but it was an interesting first step to backstage interviewing, and that kind of first show was a good learning curve for me. It kind of taught me a few lessons about what to do, what not to do when doing backstage interviewing, because as you mentioned, it is totally different to when you're doing a podcast, and you kind of you'll chat with the wrestler, with the talent, might only be a minute 30, 2 minutes tops, and you do kind of have to think on your feet sometimes. And I think if you know you're going to talk to somebody in advance, make a few notes on your phone, or after having seen their match, you can kind of refer to their match. But a lot of it is kind of on the spot, how you're feeling in that moment. And there's been some interesting interviews I've had. For example, there was a bit of a mini rivalry between Heidi Katrina and my baseball cap, which she seemed to like to hit off whenever I interviewed her backstage. And I think the last time I met her, she actually gave me a forearm to the chest, which legitimately kind of winded me, and I felt it a few days later. Let's be honest. I'm not a trained wrestler. I haven't taken any blows any before, but that was interesting. And I've had Nathan Cruz grab me by the shirt and kind of pull me in as he was talking intensely into the microphone and into the camera. So that was interesting. I honestly thought they'd ripped my shirt at one stage, but no, it's just the lanyard that had come apart at the back, so no harm done. But he did warn me in advance that he was going to do it. It was part of his new kind of character's new heel persona. I've had some interesting encounters, but in the 5 Wrestle Carnival shows and the 1 Immortal wrestling show, I've probably done about 30 or 40 backstage interviews now. I'm getting okay at it now, to be honest with you. Legends of the business, like Doug Williams, Johnny Storm, that I've had the pleasure of, meeting and interviewing backstage, former WWE performer, Axel Titcher, Alexander Wolf, of course, from, Imperium, I interviewed at the last show. Really, really great guy. I think he spoke for nearly 4 minutes, to be honest with you.
Oh, wow.
He kind of really poured his heart out. But, and off camera, it was quite interesting because we spoke to Axel about the whole Walter Gunther name situation, because that had kind of been in the news and was quite a hot topic. So after we stopped recording our interview, I said, what's your opinion on this? And he kind of told us that he'd spoken to Walter and they're good friends, and he said that Walter, at the end of the day, it's just business. It's just business, and obviously Walter didn't want Walter being trademarked by the WWE, so he was happy to change his name, and he said it's just business. And at the end of the day, if he's still destroying his competition with those lethal drop kicks and chops of his, who's going to care what his name is when he's piling up his victims in the corner of a ring? It really isn't going to matter what he's going to be called at the end of the day. And there's been so many gimmick and name changes to people over the years, and they've come through the other end successfully. So I'm sure Walter, being as talented and as fantastic as he is, will be successful at the other side of it, I'm sure. But that's just another example of interesting conversation that you kind of get backstage, and you'd know all about that, I'm sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've got the first 3 DVDs of Wrestle Carnival. I really enjoyed the first 3 shows. I'll have to get the next couple when they're available. So yeah, but you kind of started with a better match, not Fatal 4-Way between Lando, Newman, Black, and Mayhew. That's just if you're going
to start a new promotion, what better way to kind of kick things off than with that 4-way match between 4 of the best high-flying, fast-paced young talent, not just in the country, but in Europe, as far as I'm concerned. And Joe Lando, what an amazing talent. Maverick Mayhew, Danny Black, who's doing some great things in Progress as well and all around the UK. And of course, Callum Newman, who just appears to be absolutely everywhere, going up against everybody. So, yeah, I mean, when you're talking about people who are going to be huge names in the next 3 to 5 years, those 4 names are going to be on pretty much everybody's list. And they're at such a high level at such a young age already. I say that, they've been in the business for a few years already. So,
it's not as if Joe Lando,
they're brand new. Yeah.
Probably late 18, early 19 at Wrestle Island, and he's improved so much since I saw him then. So, yeah, he was with the tag team. I don't know what the tag team was called.
No, I'm not sure. I saw Joe Lando in November of Wrestle for Immortal Wrestling as well, against Kelly Six. And that was an incredible match. That really, really was. I think it's actually available on Immortal Wrestling's YouTube channel. So Joe Lando and Kelly Six are a great match. Probably the best match of the night. Well, not probably, definitely. The main event was pretty tasty as well. But go and check that out if you haven't already. But and Kelly Six, first time I've seen him in the flesh, to be honest with you. But having interviewed him in the past, I know that his style has changed. I think he was a lot more high flying, a lot more athletic himself, and now he's a lot more ground based, a lot more character based, and he's kind of bulked up a bit as well. So it was interesting to see those two work, and a great dynamic between the two as well, having the bigger and then the smaller wrestler, but two fantastic talents for sure.
So was that the first? Was that the debut show of Immortal Wrestling?
Well, it's kind of their return. I think they had 2, maybe 3 shows before, but it had been, I'd say, at least a couple of years since their previous show to the one they had in November, and they maybe had 1, maybe 2 shows tops before that. So over the last 3 years, they've had about 3 shows, obviously with a big gap in between because of the pandemic. But and then they're back again in April for their next show. And I think we spoke a little bit before you hit record, but they've already announced a couple of amazing matches. Marcy Kirby versus Joe Lando again. And you said Dan Maloney was on the card as well versus, I can't remember his opponent.
Easton Reese.
Yeah. Oh man.
So that's a proper old school heavyweight battle.
100%, yeah. So, and I'll be at that one as well. And like I say, obviously Immortal Wrestling, Wrestle Carnival, you mentioned, Sacrifice Pro, who I'll be doing backstage work for their next show on the 25th of February. And that's a crossover show between them and UBW, which would be fantastic. And World Pro Wrestling. So I interviewed Matt Jarrett, the owner, the promoter of World Pro Wrestling earlier on this week, which is out there and available now, talking about the up-and-coming show on the 19th, Saturday, from the Cheltenham Town Hall, and I'll be there. Matches like Tajiri versus Jody Fleisch and Easton Reese versus Joel Redmond, and you've got some other great international talent coming over as well. Unfortunately, their current champion, Two Gold Scorpio, I think he double booked and he's going to be performing for GCW in the States. But so that would have been great, because Two Gold Scorpio, one of my all-time favourites. So I remember watching him in the early 90s, WCW, then on to ECW, and then that Flash Funk thing that he did in WWF was quite interesting. But still a phenomenal athlete, and still incredibly 25, close to 30 years on, he's still doing the business. So it would have been nice to have seen him. But so I've kind of got involved with a few promotions at the moment. Besides, still very, very busy with the podcast and interviewing, like yourself, a lot of the biggest names in independent wrestling, and shedding some light on some newer talent as well, which is always great fun. So busy, and like I say, this past November marked 3 years of me as a podcaster, as a content creator, as Wrestling with Johners, and it's been a great journey, an interesting journey, a fun journey.
Yo, my name's Danny Reed, and you are listening to the Broken But Glorious podcast.
This will give your age away to everybody. So who's your favourite wrestler growing up?
Right, okay. I always liked Hulk Hogan, because back in the early 90s, who didn't love Hulk Hogan for his larger than life personality, the music, the real American music, still I think probably the best entrance music of anybody of all time. It's enough to kind of get everybody up off their seats wanting to tear their t-shirt off, to be honest with you. But just the charisma of the man. But honestly, I've always been a fan of the heel, and Ric Flair, when he came onto the scene in WWF in late 91, I gravitated towards, because of the robes, the hair, the promos, the fact that he was a heel, the fact that, he had all the fantastic, catchphrases and, mic work, and, he was never the best wrestler in the ring in terms of, moves or anything like that. But just when you think of great professional wrestlers, Ric Flair is nearly always in, kind of everybody's top 10. And he's certainly right up there for me. Like I say, not for flashiness or not for cool moves or anything like that, but just, he was just a great worker, a fantastic all-rounder as far as I was concerned. And I was more attracted to the personality of Ric Flair, to be honest with you, and his entrances, and like I say, his robes, and the way he was with the lovely ladies and the limousines, and, the jet flying, kiss stealing son of a gun. So I've got to say Ric Flair, closely followed by, Bret Hart. Because around that time, 91, 92 was when Bret Hart really came into his own as a singles performer.
Definitely.
And, I think that besides being a big fan of the heels, I also loved the technical prowess of the smaller wrestlers that were coming onto the scene then, like the Bret Harts, dare I say it, Mr. Perfect, although he wasn't necessarily a small wrestler, he was still a big guy. They're all big guys, let's face it. Shawn Michaels is when Shawn Michaels kind of started to break in, but, you can kind of get the feel for my sort of, taste in terms of wrestlers, certainly in the early years, but, I started watching wrestling, probably even earlier than that, to be fair, because, don't know about yourself, Chris, but I grew up in the 80s, and of course, every Saturday afternoon on ITV, you had a certain sports program called World of Sports.
Yes,
they would have wrestling on every Saturday afternoon.
Recollections of watching it at my nan's.
Yeah.
World Sports,
Same thing for me. I would go around my nan's, some Saturdays, and got to give credit to my nan. She was probably the one that got me into pro wrestling, because she was the one that had it on every Saturday afternoon, shouting at the telly, waving the rolled up newspaper at the bad guys through the TV, shaking a walking stick at the TV, and I kind of, obviously turned my attention to what was going on the TV, and it was pro wrestling. And obviously that ended late 80s, and then it was a friend that got me introduced to WWF. He would have the WWF pay-per-views and its weekly shows recorded by an uncle of his, and he would have the VHS tapes. He would invite me around, so we would have a kickabout game of football in the park, and then after that would go back to his and watch WWF on VHS. And
we used to go to the video shop every week and just rent a video wrestling video, so it was never in any chronological order. It was just wrestling. So
yeah, but it didn't matter, did it? It didn't matter whether it was something from 1990 or 91 or 92. It was kind of that. I think that was one of my favourite eras, not just because that was kind of around the time when I got into wrestling, but it was colourful. You had your larger than life characters. You had your over the top face paint and costumes, and yeah, absolutely loved it. I still remember to this day the segment where Jake the Snake Roberts got his King Cobra, latched it onto the arm of Macho Man Randy Savage, and they would never do an angle like that nowadays. But back then,
an adult show they want to.
Back then it was shocking. It was shocking because it was real. There was nothing fake about that, and I think that definitely caught my attention. And from there, I was hooked. I went to my first live wrestling show. It was probably when the WWF toured the UK, early 92. And my second live show, believe it or not, was Summerslam 92, Wembley Stadium. I would have been 16 then. I was way up in the gods at the old Wembley Stadium. Went with my dad and two friends, and 80,000 plus screaming wrestling crazy fans from all over the UK and all over Europe. And still to this day, it feels as fresh in my mind as it did then. The sun was beaming, the electricity in the atmosphere in that stadium, you could feel it even before the first match started. The undercard was nothing really to shout out about, but obviously you had the legends in the ring, the larger than life characters, and your chances. Go on.
My VHS of 92.
Yes, I had that. Yeah, I had that, and I think I've still got it in a cupboard somewhere as well. But
I don't have a video player anymore, but I can't get rid of the wrestling VHS.
But the Macho Man versus the Ultimate Warrior, you kind of tell people that you've seen those two fight for the WWF World Championships, and it's just
I love that 1992 Macho Man run. That was because I got Sky just before Survivor Series 91, so that's when I started watching it regularly. So the Macho Man Ric Flair feud was kind of my introduction to. So I was 10 at the time, so I was a bit younger than you.
Yeah.
So I hated Ric Flair. I loved Macho Man. Ric Flair was after Macho Man's girlfriend. He was saying all these horrible things about Elizabeth, that they were together, and he had dirty photos of her.
and I mean, just sticking with SummerSlam for a bit, I'll never forget seeing the Undertaker come down on the back of that hearse. Seeing the Legion of Doom come down on their Harleys, and just absolutely fantastic. And like I say, that main event is a match that people still talk about today. Bret Hart, Davey Boy Smith. When you talk about classic matches, a lot of people kind of have that as one of their best and most favourite intercontinental title matches of all time. And to say that I was there, that I was fortunate enough to be there, and when you're in there watching that match, you know when that bell rings, and when Davey Boy holds up the title, you know you've seen a classic, you know you've seen something special. It really, really was. So I'm very lucky. But yeah, I'm sticking with 92. WrestleMania 8 is still one of my favourite shows.
Yes.
You know, when I'm...
The other VHS I've got.
Yeah. And when I'm having a shit day and I just want something to watch, I'll usually stick WrestleMania 8 on, to be honest with you. And, you know, the match between Bret Hart and Roddy Piper, Ric Flair versus Macho Man, even the main event, just seeing Sid, main event at WrestleMania, I always get a kick out of that, because I was always a big Sid fan, to be honest with you. And, you know, to think that, you know, he could have done so much more during that run, but obviously, you know, various issues, that we won't get into, but, so pleased when he returned a few years later and had that great, you know, title run, and, you know, yeah. And then from there, I've got to say, I became a huge ECW fan, back from when it first launched, 93, 94, when they were, first of all, Eastern Championship Wrestling, before they became Extreme, but you could see the seeds of it even in the early days. They were trying to be something different, something unique. And, you know, ECW, is a big part of why I continue to be, a wrestling fan, to be honest with you.
Yeah, ECW is something that I've had to watch retrospectively since we got the network. I've never really watched it that much growing up. I think I discovered it. Well, they had that mini invasion in like mid-90s, didn't they?
97, I think.
97, yeah. So I was kind of, well, it was the awful video games they brought out. That's how I really got into ECW. But yeah, I've actually retrospectively went back and watched it, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And the reason why I loved ECW is because it really did kind of give you that variety. They really did introduce a lot of new styles to a North American audience and to North American wrestling, like the lucha style, the Japanese style, the hardcore style, and the more technical stuff as well.
WWF and WCW just basically robbed that format and said, that's got to be our mid card now.
Yeah. I mean, think about what wrestling has become, and, you know, every promotion has its own hardcore bout or hardcore style, and, you know, we're so familiar with the different styles of pro wrestling now, but ECW were responsible for introducing us to a lot of that to start off with. And, you know, the household names that it kind of gave us from this underground promotion, you know, when you're at a live show and somebody gets a chair out, you can bet, you know, there's a section of the audience that's going to start chanting ECW. You know, you're talking nearly 30 years on from when they started, and 20 years since they folded. So, yeah, and obviously we go from there into the Attitude Era. I was a bit of a lapsed fan.
That was the next question, if you're a lapsed fan.
So, from about 2001, 2002, up until about 2010, believe it or not. So for a good 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, I was very similar.
Yeah.
I kind of stopped watching. When did I get to? Probably when I was about 16, when it was more cool to go out drinking and meet people. And till about the invasion. When I heard this invasion was happening, so I started watching again for that, like 2001. Then I moved out. Didn't have Sky, so I stopped watching that until 2006-ish. I kind of kept up with results and stuff, and I was watching the odd thing at my mum's. Yeah. Then 2006, I heard ECW starting up again. So I was like, okay, we'll get Sky Sports now.
Yeah. Well, I still watch the pay-per-views. A friend of mine would record the pay-per-views and give me the tape, and I would watch, you know, WrestleMania and the big shows without fail. And I would buy the Power Slam magazine religiously. I think I had every single edition of that from 93 through to 2014 when they folded. So I'll still keep up to date with it, but I did lose a bit of interest in it, and around that time, got married, started having children, buying a house, concentrating on my career. So, you know, although I still kept up with wrestling for that period of 8 years or so, I didn't really watch too much. And then, like yourself, I went back when I started getting into it, 2010, I went back and kind of caught up with, you know, the big shows and all the big pay-per-views and the storylines and the angles and the recommended matches from that period. You know, on one hand, I was quite gutted that I didn't kind of keep yourself in the loop and watch more of it. But then, like you say, when you're kind of starting a family and, you know, having Sky is not always a necessity. You know, obviously it's not cheap to have satellite TV. So, we spent our money elsewhere. But yeah, from 2010 onwards, been back into it, a big time. And, it's been interesting the last 12 years or so to see how wrestling has changed and, you know, but, the more it kind of changes, the more it stays the same, to be honest with you. And,
definitely. So I think it was 2011 because that was when my son started loving it. So, I just rekindled my love for wrestling through him.
Yeah.
For the, I just remember SummerSlam 92.
Yeah.
I said we got Sky. We didn't get proper Sky. We just got a dodgy Sky box from Paul in the snooker club. So we watched SummerSlam 92 on one of them dodgy German channels in German. So the first time we watched it live.
Yeah, and that was quite unique. I mean, it's quite interesting that we're talking about SummerSlam 92 because we're approaching the 30-year anniversary of that show this year.
Yes.
In just a few months. And so obviously back then it was recorded on a Saturday, but I don't think it aired in the States until I think either the following day or maybe the Monday. So and they switched the main events around. I think if I'm not mistaken, in America they put Mcmahon and Ultimate Warrior on last as their pay-per-view main event. Whereas for the live audience, and then eventually
a bit jarring, wasn't Mcmahon and Ultimate Warrior in the light?
Yeah, exactly. But for the American audience, they switched the main events, and obviously they put it right for the network version or for the DVD version. But an amazing show, and I'm wondering, I'm hoping whether we might get a big pay-per-view over here, maybe this year or sometime soon. But it's not too late for them to. You know, obviously we've got some great stadiums over here and of course the new Wembley. I'm sure it will sell out, but there's obviously a lot of logistical problems to, hosting such a big show over here in the UK, but, we'll keep
on. They can do it in Saudi Arabia, they can do it here.
Oh,
you make 5,000.
You really do. Making brilliant. But unfortunately, I don't think we've got any princes over here that are going to
we just need a billionaire wrestling fan.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, in AEW, they will do a show over here for the 30th anniversary.
Wow, wouldn't that be ironic? Yeah, some sort of Davey Boy Smith memorial, tournament over here in the UK. But
DH Smith wins.
Yeah. But no doubt, I mean, you're a huge indie fan, same as myself. But no doubt, indie promotions will kind of do some kind of homage to SummerSlam in their own way.
Well, that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure that we'll see a lot of kind of throwbacks to SummerSlam 92 being the 30th year anniversary, hopefully with our homegrown promotions, but that'd be quite fun to see.
Cool. So as we've mentioned, you host the Wrestling with Johners podcast coming just past the 3rd year. So how did you get into podcasting? And then tell us a bit about the show. And so.
Yeah, great question.
I can't believe it's only 3 years.
I know. It does feel
we started about the same time. But
yeah, no. I mean, how long have you been doing yours for now? About 4 or 5?
2017. Yeah, so it's our 5th year in June.
Yeah. So I mean, you are, one of the kind of standard bearers of UK podcasting, because I know a lot of the podcasts that are out there now have started within the last couple of years. Certainly, so many kind of came up during the pandemic when people were at home. I saw my kind of listens go down quite a bit when all these podcasts started cropping up. But
the beginning of the pandemic, we had a noticeable drop.
Yeah,
then, it picked up as was going on.
But I mentioned earlier that I started getting back into wrestling around 2010, and wrestling podcasts started becoming a thing around, I think, early 2010s, and certainly, the Stone Cold Steve Austin podcast has been around for probably close to 10 years. Chris Jericho's podcast has been around for 10 years as well. Others that have been around for longer than that, like Solid Monster, Sounds Off.
I think I discovered them in about 2012.
Yeah.
Yeah, I started to listen to ones like the V2 wrestling podcast in like 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
Things like the Body Slam podcast.
I mean, they seem like quite a more of a newer phenomenon, but really they've been around for quite a few years. But obviously the popularity has really gone through.
I started my football podcast in 2013. But
I mean, like so many people would listen to these podcasts and would try to listen to as many as you can to get all the information. And I think it was really when Conrad Thompson launched his podcast with Bruce Pritchard, Something to Wrestle With, in 2016. Then I was hooked. I was listening to everything. I was listening to all of their episodes, listening to more and more and more, and thinking, well, you know, I've been a wrestling fan for quite a few years. I know a little bit about the business, and have an enthusiasm and a passion for pro wrestling. But it wasn't until I went to New Orleans in 2018 for WrestleMania, and I was listening to a whole shed load of podcasts on the flight over there and on the flight back, and was really, really inspired, having been out there for 5 days, 5 fantastic days. And I came back and I thought, well, you know, what's the worst that could happen? Let's give it a go. Let's see how it goes. So I had a cheap laptop, got myself a cheap microphone headset, and then I dropped episode 1. I think it was on the 12th of November 2018. And to start off with, it was just me and a microphone of reviewing NXT UK, which was the new show on the WWE Network. I think I reviewed episode 1 of that all the way through, probably for the first 6 months or so. And then I would review AEW when that came on board, the Black and Gold, NXT, WWE pay-per-views, Progress, New Japan. And I was just started to find my feet as a review show more than anything. I would go to shows and review them, like Progress and NXT UK and whatnot. Had guests from all over. I tried to get on as many podcasting friends as I could. You came onto the show as well, and we reviewed
that came on for
Summerslam 92, was it? We reviewed.
We did WrestleMania. Oh, I must say WrestleMania 8. I'm thinking that might end.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it was WrestleMania 8. I remember now. Yeah. I can't remember who I reviewed SummerSlam 92 with. It might have been Mike Angus, but I
think you did. I think we originally I wanted to do 92, and I think you said I've just done that.
Yes, I remember. And then I got into interviewing the stars. So the first person I interviewed wasn't really a big name, but you might know Sean McMahon, who was the promoter of the Extreme Dwarfinators when they came over to the UK. So I interviewed Sean McMahon. Unfortunately,
that's how you have to start with interviews. I think you start and you get a bit of a reputation as a good guy around the wrestling community. Sean Custom was my second ever interview. And then I think Gary Ward was my third ever interview. And then I would do interviews here and there, but was mostly concentrating on reviews, remaining a review show. But it was really around the end of 2019 when I got involved with Turnbuckle TV, who then transitioned into Powered 4 TV, would do interviews for them and in conjunction with them. And I was interviewing the likes of Big F and Joe, CJ Carter, guys from IWE UK over in Essex. The names just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I'd say from 2020, 2021 onwards, just I've been blessed and really, really privileged to have interviewed so many amazing names on the independent circuit from the US. This year, you've had a great range of wrestlers. You've got Robbie X and Kanji, Charles Crowley, Gabert. Is there a method behind the selection of guests, or a conscious decision to make such a wide range of workers, or is it just this came up?
It's a really, really good question. I tend to approach talent that I like to watch perform, essentially. So whether I've seen them on the TV or seen them, up front at a wrestling show, if I appreciate their work and really enjoy what they do, I'm thinking, really want to get them on as a guest. More recently, over the last year or so, a lot of these wrestlers have been coming to me asking to come on the show, which has been absolutely fantastic. Of course, you're not going to say no to that. So it really is a combination of people that I would like to have on as a guest, people that approach me wanting to be on the show, which is absolutely fantastic. And one thing that it's really, really done for me is it's opened my eyes up to independent talent that I was not familiar with before. I'll be honest with you, I'm probably a little bit maybe naive, in some cases ignorant of certain UK indie promotions and certain UK indie talents, and it's really, really opened up my eyes to the amazing talent we've got out there on the Brit Rest scene. And certainly since wrestling came back in the summer of last year, 2021, it's made me kind of
it's been amazing.
Appreciate what an amazing kind of collection of promotions and talent we've got out there that might have been bubbling under the surface before. Obviously, you had all the big names that you haven't got now for reasons we're not going to get into. But what that did was that gave an opportunity for these that were bubbling under the surface to really flourish and to come to prominence and to kind of really make a name for themselves. And 2021 has been a great year for so much talent and indie promotions out there in the UK especially. I think the UK indie scene is in a really, really healthy place now, to be honest with you. And whatever happened before, I think was obviously for the benefit of UK indie wrestling, but I think it also allowed promotions and younger talent to flourish, whereas before they might not have had the opportunity to. But yeah, I think the UK Brit Rest scene at the moment is not necessarily as good as it's ever been, but I think it's come back very, very strong, very, very healthy.
Yeah, definitely. I've never been to so many. We used to only go to Wrestle Island and the occasional All-Star when it came to town.
Yeah.
But since we've started going to TNT Ignition, I've been to the odd TNT Extreme show, we've been to Britannia shows, we've been to Mega Slam, I've been to 2 Odyssey shows. I think just have it as a star for the 18 months. We're going to go like at least 1 a month. Usually 2 a month.
Yeah, absolutely.
And during lockdown we discovered so many great promotions on like Sacrifice and UBW and Rumble Wrestling promotions and stuff online. And my son Isaac's got a slight obsession with Rumbles and Paradox, the group. So he found this Rumble from Britannia that had all the Paradox in, and it's got like 1,100 views on YouTube, and I think at least 900 of them are Isaac. He couldn't. The first couple of months of lockdown, he watched that Rumble to death. He could name who was coming out next. He was only like 5. So it's like, he watched it that many times.
Oh, that's brilliant. That really is. But I've been, let's say, really, really blessed. I think 2021 was a great year for me, and being able to really find my stride and really kind of find my voice in podcasting and develop, my style. And I'd say 2021 I had so many great stars on, but I mean, episode 200, which was in August, I had the Ascension on. I mean, that was just an amazing thrill to have those two, and they were so kind of happy to come on the show and to talk for about an hour and 15 minutes about their NXT and WWE days and what they're up to on the indies. And then you go from there to, Joel Redmond and Heidi Katrina, Will Cruz, for example. Will Cruz was another wrestler that I was kind of, sleeping on really before the pandemic. Although he was champion of various promotions, there was some great stuff, before, Brit Rest came back in 2021. I really hadn't heard much about Will Cruz. You probably had, but then,
I hadn't seen him live. I'd seen him on YouTube and stuff with, TNT Ignition and Preston City Wrestling and stuff. He's a name that keeps popping up. I've never actually seen him live. So.
But go back to what I said earlier about myself being maybe naive or maybe slightly ignorant. One huge thrill for me, and I'm sure it's the same for you, is when you've got a guest coming on, you don't know too much about them, and you put the hard work and the hours researching this guest, and to the point where when you do start talking about them or to them, you feel like you know them really, really well, and you've done your research, and you know what direction to take the interview in because you know that person, or you feel like you know that person. It kind of makes the interview flow a lot more naturally, but it's kind of learning about that person and about their past and about what motivates them, what's inspired them. And you kind of, I think that's the best thing about podcasting really, is learning about the person behind the character or the person behind the wrestler and what makes them tick. Like I say, although, and you'll know this better than anybody, researching a wrestler that you might not know too well can take many, many hours. But that hard work and that preparation certainly pays off for a good interview, and they appreciate the work and the effort you've gone to. But it kind of, for anybody that's thinking about getting into podcasting or doing interviewing, I think preparation, doing your research is the number one thing you have to do. You can't go into an interview with just a few bullet points. You really got to do your research and know about that person. And I think that's one thing that I've always prided myself on is doing the groundwork, doing the hard work before because that is the hard work, talking to the individual, asking them the questions, finding out about the individual and having a good rapport with the individual. That's easy. It's all the work that goes on beforehand that is the hard work. And that's kind of the thing that you need to concentrate on. Preparation is the most important thing when, with any sort of podcast, content creation, but certainly interviews. Like I say, love all the hard work, love the grind of being a podcaster, but it is damn hard work, isn't it, Chris?
It's definitely it. Yeah. Sometimes when you've done like a 90-minute interview, you're like, oh god, I have to edit this now. It's a great interview. Yeah. That's why I like to be a week ahead of myself, so I have a week to edit it rather than having to get it out in a day. But I mean, one thing that I've started doing since 2021 is all of my interviews are live as well. Yes. So, I think that's helped me kind of develop my style and kind of develop my skills as an interviewer, because you have to, and once again, go back into the preparation. Your preparation has to be on point, because if you're live, you don't want to screw up. You haven't got time for a redo, or to rewind or to hit record again, like Gene Oakland said to Sid once, on a pay-per-view, you're live, pal. You're live. I think that's one thing that's helped to improve me as a content creator and an interviewer and a podcaster, is by putting myself in that kind of pressure pot of being live. It does help to kind of hone your skills and sharpen your skills as an interviewer. And I think that's one thing that I will never go back on. I think that making that decision to do all of my stuff live on Facebook Live, YouTube and Twitch was probably the best decision I've ever made as a podcaster. I think once I get over a bit of anxiety and have a proper room to do stuff in, I might start doing live stuff. But
yeah. I do all my stuff in my living room. I have got a studio, so
mine's in the...
Yeah.
I'm kind of sitting at my dining table. It's a bit of a mess in this room at the moment.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to find, the best corner of the room you can before. But let's say, fortunately, I work in front of a backdrop, so I could be anywhere in the house, to be honest with you, and nobody will ever know.
Have you ever been starstruck before an interview?
Oh, that's a good question. I was quite nervous before the Ascension interview in August, but they were so down to earth. In fact,
with interviews like that, it's trying to find questions that they haven't been asked 1,000 times.
Yeah, pretty much. But I was very nervous, and Vic kind of joined the call a good 5 minutes before Con. And he's just a normal guy, just having a chat. And then by the time Con kind of came in and, joined the conversation, and it was like three old friends, and it's like we'd never spoken to each other before, but Vic was so nice at kind of just starting the conversation, and before you know it, you're just kind of having a conversation as if you'd known each other for years. But, being starstruck, I've got to be honest with you, when I interviewed, Martina Session Moth backstage Wrestle Carnival, and she's so lovely. She really is so lovely, and she kind of just launched herself into a character as soon as we hit record on the camera. But because she's, obviously an ROH star at the time and renowned all over the UK and this larger-than-life character, and you kind of have to say, would you mind doing this backstage? It's like, oh, okay. And so she decided she was more than happy to, but yeah. And the other thing about doing the backstage work, and I'm sure you'll know this from the stuff you've done, but when you are backstage in the locker room and they're all kind of talking through their matches and going through certain moves and getting themselves hyped up and in the zone, mentally and physically, the last thing they want is, a podcaster coming up to them saying, do you mind doing a backstage interview with a pre-match or a post-match interview? And it's like, so you really got to pick your times. And sometimes you can go there and you can do 10 interviews, and they'll all be happy to talk to you. Other times, you really got to pick your moments when you speak to them. And sometimes there's not quite that moment to get the person you want. But, quite often the promoter will say, look, would you mind speaking to Johners either before or after your match? And a lot of them are absolutely more than happy to. Definitely. But, and what the backstage stuff I found has been really, really good, especially for some of the indie talent that might not be used to doing promos or might not have been interviewed backstage before. It gives them an opportunity to kind of practice their promo in front of a camera where they might not ordinarily get a chance. A lot of indie shows on the UK scene might not have a backstage or a regular backstage interviewer. So to have me there is good for them to kind of, get better at cutting a promo in front of a camera. So it works both ways sometimes.
Definitely. I've never been starstruck with a wrestler, but when I interviewed Brian Zane from Wrestle with Regrets, I felt a bit of pressure doing that, and Adam Pacitti. But the time I got the guts up to ask Adam Pacitti for an interview at, what was it called? Wrestle Media Con in Manchester. Right. I'd had a couple of beers by then. So I got a bit of Dutch courage. And he was really nice. So. Yeah.
I think when you're interviewing somebody that does something very similar to yourself, you kind of want to prove yourself to that person that you're kind of worthy of speaking to them, if you see what I mean, especially if they're a bigger name than you.
Brian Zane, it's like one of my idols.
Yeah.
He's one of the few YouTubers I make sure I watch everything he does. I love it,
But I wouldn't say that I've been massively starstruck. Like I mentioned about Session Moth and all that, but they're such lovely people, and usually once you kind of hit record and you go into your own interviewer mode, then all the nerves tend to go. But being nervous is a good thing because it proves that you care and you want to do well. So I don't mind if I'm nervous, and once you start chatting, then nerves soon disappear. But they're definitely, if you're not nervous before you go into an interview or before you hit record, then you can't really call yourself a podcaster because I think nerves are good. It kind of gets the best out of you for sure.
Yeah, and with when you ask somebody to be on to do an interview, they must be a nice person because we don't pay them, and they've given up their time to come on, so if they're going to say yes, they must be a decent person. That's how I think of it. They must be a nice person to give up their time to talk to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Chris sitting in his dining room.
Well, you hear of these content creators that do pay for interviews and do spend a lot of money on certain guests, and we're talking hundreds of pounds or hundreds of dollars for some guests, and I'm thinking, why? You've been doing this 5 years. I've been doing this over 3 years. I've not spent a penny on a guest, to be honest with you, and I don't intend to.
I interviewed footballers before that, and I never paid anyone.
Yeah. But like you say, whether you're on the small side as a podcaster or got quite a few people that follow you, it's good promotion for your guest, really, and it's good promotion all round. But like I say, it's kind of a modern phenomenon, isn't it? Podcasting and being interviewed on a podcast, and I suppose the guest kind of takes their chances with whether the interviewer is any good or not, whether they've been doing it for a long time or not. But like I say, I think I've just about found my feet as an interviewer and as a podcaster, and I've kind of noticed myself improve over the last year
Definitely.
or so, and feel confident in my skills and ability as an interviewer. But it's always nice when they kind of reach out to you and say, can I come on your show, John? It shows that you're doing something right. Definitely. If they noticed you and kind of got in touch first. But, definitely. It's all good.
Yeah, I've decided this year I'm going to reach out to some of the people I interviewed in 2018 because I wasn't as confident and I didn't have the format I'm happy with now. So I'm reaching out to some of them to see if they want to come back on and redo the interview. So some of my interviews were like 15, 20 minutes long. Some of them were literally I ask a question, they answer it. I ask a question, they answer it. It wasn't as much of a chat as they are these days.
Yeah.
I think because I interviewed footballers, and that's literally how you had to do the interviews. They were so media trained.
Yeah.
So I think going from footballers to wrestlers was such a leap. It wasn't until I interviewed like Should Be, and I was like, oh, you can have proper chats with these people, isn't just.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I say, it does all come with practice, and like I say, nobody starts as a brilliant interviewer or a brilliant podcast. It all comes with practice. It all comes with time. But you have to put in the grind. You do have to put in the effort to want to be good, to eventually get good. And I'm not saying that I'm necessarily good at what I do, but I enjoy doing the interviews. I enjoy doing what I do. In fact, I love it. I more than enjoy it. I love it. It's something that I want to continue doing for a long time to come.
Hey, good brothers, this is Sunset Skip, and you are listening to the Broken But Glorious podcast.
So I think we'll finish off with, so where did the idea for the network come from?
Oh, great question. So the network launched, when did it launch? January 1st, 2021. So it's just over 1 year old. Yes. And essentially, I wanted to, well, obviously there was already Wrestling with Johners, and yes. I'd had a lot of amazing guests on the Wrestling with Johners podcast, who had reached out to me, or I'd reached out to on social media to come on the show as guests. And I thought, well, I think I can create a second show featuring these brilliant guests I've had on in the past that I've really enjoyed or I've had on as repeat guests. And I thought, let's see if they would be keen to start a show of their own. And that's what started the Turnbuckle Arms podcast.
Yes.
So then they had quite a few shows under their belts. And I thought, okay, we've got two shows now. We've got Wrestling with Johners and we got kind of the sister show, Turnbuckle Arms. It's the start of maybe something, something that we could grow here. And then I kind of threw out an invite to the Turnbuckle Arms hosts and saying, do you want to do your own show besides the Turnbuckle Arms? Here's an opportunity for you to kind of come up with your own concept, come up with your own name, your own logo. I'll give you the platform, and we'll kind of start maybe a collection of shows on a network. Eventually came up with the name, the Johners Podcaster Network. And from there, it was essentially, the idea was to give a platform to new podcasters, to give them an opportunity to start out as content creators and to go through the same journey that I went through, essentially. And it was really just to help brand new podcasters find a voice and to have an additional platform to do what they do, basically. So then it went from one podcast to two podcasts to about half a dozen shows. I reached out to one or two shows that I thought would complement the network. So I brought on Straight Talk Wrestling and Gilmy Talks and one or two other shows. I also reached out to other guests along the way and said, like, it's an opportunity. Like, for example, Nick Towers, who runs Work the Left Side podcast.
Yeah.
I noticed on social media that he had just left a group of podcasters. I can't remember what the name of that podcast. I think it's like the Hard Cam podcast. And I said, Nick, you've been a guest on my show. If you were to start your own podcast show, what would it be called? What would it be about? He came back to me and said, right, okay, there's your new show. Do you fancy being part of the network? And it's like, yeah. So it kind of started like that. It was a combination of fledgling, homegrown shows and established shows. And over time, over the last year or so, we've built this kind of beautiful thing, where we've got, content creators, YouTubers, podcasters from all over the world. I think we're on 49 channels now, so we're very, very close to having our 50th channel. We've got some wrestling content on there from a Denver-based promotion, Lucha Libre and Laughs. I know that you're familiar with Lucha Libre and Laughs because I know that you've interviewed Royce Isaacs.
Yes.
So besides their YouTube channel, we are their exclusive home. And so it's been going for just over a year now, and we have dozens of channels that drop content on a daily or a weekly basis, and essentially it's become an additional platform for content creators, but also going back to its roots is creating this family, this support mechanism, this kind of hub of content creators of all different experience levels that can share knowledge, share best practice, go to one another for support and for advice. And you know, you kind of build your network system, new friends as well within the kind of podcast community. So we built this extra platform, but also this family hub essentially of content creators that will help each other with sharing content, for example, doing music, doing graphics, overlays, sourcing guests for future shows. So pretty much anything you want, you can go to our group chat, for example, and say, right, I need help or support or advice on this, that, and the other. And more recently, you've come on board as well with your Brit Rest journey, and I'd say one of my favourite people in the podcast community, and I'm so happy to have you and your show on the Johners Podcasting Network. So in a nutshell, that's what the Johners Podcasting Network is.
Yes.
But I like to see it so much.
Every question
I like to see it as so much more than just an additional platform. I like to see it as a kind of a nice family of podcasters and content creators that help one another and support one another, so that we can help one another grow to hopefully build the community as a whole.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's a great network. I've made so many friends over the couple of years.
Yeah,
from podcasters to wrestlers to it's just widened my reach from all over the country. Some people I've never even met. Well, I've never met you in person, but
it's got to happen. It will happen one day.
Well, I was really jealous that you went to TNT Extreme Fields. I can't remember. There's a reason I couldn't go.
Such a great show.
Was it my son's birthday? I can't remember. I can't remember what date it was. But I was like, I want to go so bad. I even went out to Jay after and said, do you need any volunteers? And he was like, oh, sorry, Chris, I've already got everyone I need. I was like, I can't remember why I couldn't go.
Yeah, but a great day. I think there must have been about 15 or 16 wrestling matches. Yeah. There was about 5 or 6 bands playing between, you had maybe 4 or 5 matches, and then a band would play another 4 or 5 matches. So from I think midday that day all the way through to 8 p.m. It was just wall-to-wall wrestling and rock music. And I know that Jay's going to be doing something similar again this year. But one thing that he did, it was kind of like an indoor music / wrestling rock festival, for want of a better name. But what he did was he invited a lot of up and coming wrestling promotions from the north and northwest to be a part of it, like the LWF and BWR, Odyssey Pro, and
Wrestle Island, with their Power Up briefcase match was
So it was a phenomenal show and introduced me to a lot of wrestling talent that I hadn't seen before, or certainly hadn't seen in the flesh, and got to meet one or two. But all in all, it was just a fantastic day, headlined by a hardcore death match with light tubes and sheets of glass and barbed wire tables.
I still don't get deathmatch wrestlers. Why would anybody want to do deathmatch wrestling? I don't get it. So why do you want to get stabbed with things?
I was stood so far back because it just, but that was quite a memorable moment, to be honest with you. Not something I would want to see too often or be too close to, but definitely an amazing show.
Some wrestlers, I want to do one death match in my career.
Yes.
Why would you want to do one? I only want to do one. I was like, why would you want to do it?
Yeah. but there's a lot of blood in that. And a couple of the people that we went with, one was kind of sat about a foot and a half away from the ring when this death match was going off. I'm thinking, you're much braver than I ever will be. So I was
covered in glass by the end of the
bit more chicken, and I was right at the back of the venue for sure. But that was good and a great show. And so hopefully Jay and the TNT guys will do something similar to that, probably bigger. Knowing Jay, I know that now they've got the partnership, the association with Lee McAteer and Martin from Tranmere Rovers and Progress, of course. I think that whatever they do in the future will be bigger and better than they've ever done before.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, the Crazy House is where I grew up. That was I was there most Thursdays, Fridays, Saturday nights in my late teens, early 20s. But,
the Electric Warehouse now.
Yes, I've not been there since 2010. So when I was getting to nearly 30, I thought this was probably time to stop coming to this place.
You'll be happy to know the floors are still just as sticky as they were 10 years ago. So,
well, I've heard because since the smoking ban came in, it stinks now. Because in the past you just could just smell smoke.
Yeah,
I've heard that you can just smell everyone's sick and
everything else apart from the smoke. Absolutely.
But we're well over an hour, so I think we should call it. So before we go, do you want to promote any social media or any merch stores or anything you?
Well, I think the main place I'd like to direct your listeners to is the website or the app where you can find the network. Simply wrestlingwithjohners.com. wrestlingwithjohners.com, or if you go to the Google Play Store and search Johners, that's JOHNERS, you will find the Johners Podcasting Network app. So whether it's through the website or the app, download it to your phone. Like I say, a huge array of podcasters, content creators, wrestling podcast shows that you can watch and listen to every single day, including my Brit Rest journey and Wrestling with Johners. They're all on there. Every single episode dating back to when the show first started. Mm-hmm. So masses and masses of content there. Otherwise, on social media, just search Johners or Wrestling with Johners on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, and you'll see my lovely smiley face there. Just throw us a like. If you want to reach out to us and say hi, I'm more than happy to converse and to have a little bit of a chat, especially about pro wrestling. If you do stumble across our YouTube page, give us a subscribe. We'd love to have you as a subscriber, so you can stay up to date with what I'm up to and all the lovely wrestlers I interviewed on a weekly basis. But Chris, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's been a complete blast and an honour to be on your brilliant show.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'll put links to everything in the description below the interview. So yeah, okay. Cool. I've really enjoyed speaking today. I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Definitely, it's got to happen.